There is a version of index fund investing that exists only in theory. You open a brokerage account, set up automatic monthly contributions, select a low-cost global index fund, and then do nothing. The market goes up and down, but you stay the course. You ignore the headlines. You ignore the volatility. You keep contributing through every dip and every crash, and decades later, you arrive at retirement with a substantially larger portfolio than anyone who tried to time the market or pick individual stocks. This version is correct. The mathematics behind it are sound. The historical evidence supporting it is overwhelming. There is just one problem with it. Almost nobody actually does it when the moment arrives. And the moment that separates the theoretical index investor from the real one is a market crash. The point at which the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it becomes the most expensive gap in personal finance. Today, we are going to talk honestly about what actually happens to your index fund when markets crash. Not just the numbers, but the psychology, the specific mistakes that cost investors the most money, and the practical things you can do right now to make sure you are not one of the people who buys high and sells low while believing they are doing something rational. Let us start with the mechanics. When a stock market index falls, your index fund falls with it. This is not a flaw. It is the design. An index fund does not pick the good stocks and avoid the bad ones. It holds everything in the index proportionally. And when the index falls 10%, your fund falls approximately 10%. When the index falls 30%, your fund falls approximately 30%. When the index falls 50%, as the S&P 500 did during the 2008 financial crisis, your fund falls approximately 50%. If you had $100,000 in an index fund at the peak of the 2008 market, your statement would have shown approximately $50,000 at the trough. That is not a paper loss in any meaningful emotional sense. That is watching half of your life savings disappear from your account statement in the space of about 18 months. The people who tell you to simply stay the course during a crash have usually not looked carefully at what staying the course actually requires. It requires watching your portfolio lose 10% and doing nothing. It requires watching it lose 20% and doing nothing. It requires watching it lose 30% while every financial news headline in the world is telling you that this time is different, that the system is broken, that you need to act. It requires losing 40% and watching colleagues and friends talking about how they got out in time. It requires losing 50%, half of everything you have saved, and continuing to contribute your monthly amount into an account that is showing you a number half the size of what you put in. For most people, this is not a theoretical challenge. It is a genuinely brutal psychological experience that nothing in their financial education has prepared them for. Before we continue, take a second to like or subscribe. It is a simple action from you, but it helps us tremendously, and it helps this video reach other money-minded people like you. The data on what investors actually do during market crashes is sobering. During the 2008 to 2009 financial crisis, equity fund outflows, meaning money being pulled out of stock market funds by investors, were enormous. Billions of dollars left equity funds at exactly the point when staying invested or adding more was the mathematically optimal decision. The investors who sold in late 2008 and early 2009 locked in their losses permanently. The market recovered. The S&P 500 went on to deliver one of the longest bull runs in history. But the investors who sold at the bottom did not participate in that recovery because they were no longer invested. They had converted a temporary paper loss into a permanent real one. The same pattern repeated during the COVID-19 crash of March 2020. The S&P 500 fell approximately 34% in 33 days, one of the fastest market crashes in recorded history. Fund outflows spiked dramatically. Investors who had never experienced a serious crash before panicked and sold. And then the market recovered, completely, within 5 months. The investors who stayed fully invested through March 2020 saw their portfolios fully restored by August 2020. The investors who sold at the bottom and waited for certainty before reinvesting missed some or all of the recovery. Because markets do not wait for certainty before rising. They rise when sentiment shifts, and sentiment can shift faster than any individual investor can react. This is the central and most important thing to understand about index fund crashes. The loss is temporary. The exit is permanent. When you sell during a crash, you convert what would have been a temporary reduction in portfolio value into a permanent loss of those units at that price. You also create a second problem. You now have to decide when to get back in. And the psychology that caused you to sell at the bottom is the same psychology that will prevent you from buying back in at the bottom. You will wait for the market to stabilize. You will wait for clarity. You will wait until the news stops being scary. And by the time the news stops being scary, the market will have already risen 20 or 30 or 40% from the point where you sold. You will have sold low, and you will buy back high. The exact opposite of rational investing behavior, executed with complete sincerity. The psychological mechanisms that drive these mistakes are not signs of stupidity or irrationality. They are the outputs of deeply evolved human instincts applied to a context those instincts were never designed for. Loss aversion, the documented human tendency to feel losses approximately twice as intensely as equivalent gains, makes watching a portfolio decline feel genuinely painful in a way that watching it rise does not feel pleasurable. The brain registers a $50,000 loss far more intensely than a $50,000 gain, and it generates a powerful drive to stop the pain by taking action. Selling feels like taking control. It feels like stopping the bleeding. It is neither of those things. But the feeling is real, and it drives behavior that looks irrational from the outside, but feels completely rational from the inside. Social proof is the second mechanism. When everyone around you is talking about the crash, when the news is dominated by falling markets, when your colleagues are discussing what they have done with their portfolios, when social media is full of financial panic, the social environment generates enormous pressure to act in alignment with the group. Humans are social animals, and the instinct to align behavior with the group in a crisis is ancient and powerful. In most survival contexts, following the group is adaptive. In financial markets during a crash, following the group, which is selling, is the single most financially destructive thing you can do. Recency bias is the third mechanism. After a significant market decline, the brain projects recent experience forward. The market has been falling, so the brain expects it to continue falling. This is why investors sell after markets have already fallen dramatically rather than before. The crash makes the continuation of the crash feel more likely, even though historically markets recover and the best returns often come in the immediate aftermath of the worst drawdowns. The investors who added money to their index funds in March 2009 and March 2020, at the points that felt most frightening, generated the strongest short-term returns of any investors in those periods. They did not do this because they were brave. They did it because they had systems and rules that overrode their emotional responses in the moment. So what actually protects you from making these mistakes? The first and most powerful protection is understanding your own risk tolerance before you need it. Risk tolerance questionnaires ask how you would feel about a 20% portfolio decline. The honest answer for almost everyone is significantly worse than they predict before experiencing it. The practical implication is that your equity allocation should be calibrated not to what you think you can tolerate in theory, but to what you can genuinely tolerate in practice. The allocation at which you will not sell when the portfolio is down 30 or 40%. A portfolio you hold through a crash is worth dramatically more than a portfolio you sell at the bottom. The second protection is automation. The investors who stay invested through crashes most reliably are those who have set up automatic monthly contributions that continue regardless of market conditions. When your investment happens automatically on a fixed date every month, you remove the decision point from the equation. You are not choosing to invest in a falling market. The investment simply happens. This removes the moment of decision that fear can capture. You contribute when markets are up, and you contribute when markets are down. And the average cost of your investment across all conditions is lower than if you had tried to time your entries. The third protection is deliberate distance from your portfolio during periods of market stress. The investors who check their portfolio balance daily during a crash experience the losses repeatedly and accumulate emotional damage that increases the probability of panic selling. The investors who check quarterly or monthly experience the same numerical loss, but with significantly less emotional intensity. If you know from historical evidence that you are likely to check your portfolio more frequently during a crash, the preemptive decision to limit portfolio checking during periods of market stress is a genuinely protective financial behavior. The fourth protection is the right time horizon. Index fund investing in equity markets is not a strategy suited to money you might need within 5 years. Money needed within 5 years should not be in equity markets at all, regardless of index fund fees or long-term performance data. A crash that occurs when you are 3 years from needing the money is a catastrophe. A crash that occurs when you are 20 years from needing the money is an opportunity, or at worst, an irrelevant temporary reduction in a number that will be much higher by the time you need it. The most common source of panic selling during crashes is having money in equity markets that should never have been there in the first place. The fifth and final protection is the historical record itself, genuinely internalized rather than abstractly acknowledged. Every significant market crash in history has been followed by a recovery. The 1929 crash, the 1987 crash, the dot-com collapse of 2000 to 2002, the 2008 financial crisis, the 2020 pandemic crash. In every case, the market recovered and went on to reach new all-time highs. This does not guarantee the future will follow the same pattern, but the investor who has genuinely internalized this historical reality, not as an abstract fact, but as a visceral understanding of what previous recovery looked like and how long it took, is significantly better equipped to hold through a crash than the investor who knows the data intellectually but has never allowed it to shape their emotional relationship with market volatility. The gap between knowing what to do and doing it is the most expensive gap in investing, and the market crash is the specific moment where that gap opens widest. Preparing for it before it arrives, through the right allocation, the right automation, the right distance, the right time horizon, and the right historical understanding, is the most important financial preparation most index fund investors never make. Because the next crash is not a possibility. It is a certainty. The only unknown is when it will arrive. Click here to watch the index fund nobody talks about that outperforms the S&P 500, because understanding how to hold through a crash is only half the picture, and knowing what you are holding matters just as much.